Welcome back to the Replay Media. Today, we recap the final episode of one of the best Marvel Studios series, Loki. Was Loki able to save the temporal loom? Or did he unleash unprecedented multiversal chaos? Let's find out. The episode begins with the classic Marvel Studios intro, only this time it's in reverse, referencing Loki's new power. Just after returning to the moment when the temporal loom collapses, Loki allows Timely to go out and fix the problem. Like last time, Timely disintegrates from the high temporal radiation, but Loki had that planned. In fact, he takes advantage of it to ask OB what they could have done differently. To that, OB replies that they took too long. Loki returns to that crucial moment to speed up the process, even preempting OB's directions. However, Timely disintegrates. Despite that, Loki keeps replaying the scene over and over again, trying things different at each attempt. He even asks Miss Minutes for help, something that of course doesn't go well. After Timely disintegrates a million times, Loki goes back a little further in time. Arriving at the moment when Timely meets OB, Loki explains directly to him how to enter the temporal loom and fix the problem. Right away, OB replies that the multiplier, the crucial device for that operation, was not ready. Although Loki already knew that Timely had a prototype to extend the temporal input. That device plus the multiplier will enlarge the rings of the temporal loom and voila! All timelines will be safe. Despite Loki's assurance, OB still expresses many doubts, so Loki himself sets out to learn everything he knows about mechanics, physics, and engineering. To his misfortune, it will take centuries for him to have all that knowledge. After centuries of learning, the Norse god returns more confident than ever to repair the temporal loom, and prepares Timely for the mission. This time, Loki keeps up with OB about science and knows exactly how every device works. That raises Mobius's suspicions, though Loki asks him to trust his plan. Everything indicated that this attempt will succeed, so Timely swoops in to save the timelines and doesn't disintegrate. On the contrary, he resists the temporal radiation, with a lot of effort of course. But he keeps a steady pace while Loki motivates him with the microphone. Thus, Timely reaches the launcher to charge the multiplier and activate it with a green button. The launcher then fires the multiplier into the temporal loom, which means the plan has worked and Timely can return. As soon as Timely's in safe territory, everyone celebrates, as they see the temporal loom getting bigger with many more branches. But the happiness only lasted a few seconds, as OB detects some negative readings on the temporal loom, indicating that it is overloading again. The multiplier did its job, but it wasn't enough for so many infinitely doubling and expanding temporal branches. Timely is the first to realize this, explaining that covering an infinite multiverse is impossible. It's like trying to divide by zero. In other words, their attempts will always fail. Finally, the inevitable happens. The temporal loom explodes. Unwilling to give up, Loki returns to his past version of when Sylvie was about to kill He Who Remains. Right away, Loki pushes her away and makes it clear that she'll be dooming the timeline if she murders He Who Remains. Instead of falling for the kiss like last time, Loki fights her again and again, but always loses and sees her murdering He Who Remains. At each attempt, Sylvie warns that the only way to stop her is to kill her, though Loki refuses to do that. He even asks He Who Remains to defend himself, but he has already accepted his fate. Suddenly, He Who Remains pauses Sylvie to speak personally with Loki, as he acknowledges that he has gone back in time many times. Also, let's not forget that he paved the whole way. Then, He Who Remains explains that he never exactly dies, but always reincarnates. Still, he doesn't think Loki is ready to accept that, and returns Sylvie to normal. Suddenly, Loki pauses Sylvie, taking He Who Remains by surprise. As a reward, He Who Remains points out that the temporal loom is made failsafe, and when it's overloaded with temporal branches, it automatically erases the ones that shouldn't exist, all except the sacred timeline. To him, the TVA is nothing more than collateral damage that is easy to rebuild. No matter how much Loki does, the outcome of that scenario will always be the same. He loses, because that's what villains do. But this Loki is no longer a villain. and he claims that he will change the equation with the destruction of the temporal loom. As soon as he hears that, He Who Remains reminds him that the loom is the only thing preventing an unprecedented multiversal war, in which nothing survives, not even the sacred timeline. Furthermore, He Who Remains is quite clear that he's charged with protecting time as it is. All beings can enjoy their lives while he keeps watch over the end of time, even though he offers no real freedom. That's not enough for Loki, though. So He Who Remains challenges him to kill Sylvie to prevent the main problem. Loki doesn't dare do that, and goes back to his first day at TVA when Mobius was interviewing him. Right away, Loki indicates that he's going to turn on the screen to show him the past, present, and future of his life, to show him that his glorious purpose will end at the hands of Thanos. That was enough for Mobius to recognize that he's talking to another Loki, who asks him how they choose who dies and who lives. Then, Mobius narrates the story of a TVA hunter who was supposed to prune a variant responsible for thousands of deaths. The problem is that this variant was a child, who had not yet become the monster, so he hesitated to kill it. His partner had to finish the job, but the first hunter's seconds of hesitation branched time and ended the lives of several hunters. TVA must never forget the big picture. Mobius himself points out that all purposes are more a burden than a glory. Eventually, he learned to bear it, with all the necessary scars. It turns out that the hunter in the story was him, and the companion who didn't hesitate to do the job was Renslayer, who was promoted after that. In conclusion, Mobius indicates that he should choose his own burden, for which Loki thanks him heartily before watching that timeline disintegrate. Returning to his friends before they disappear, Loki pauses time to talk to Sylvie and inform her of what has happened. Sylvie is quick to understand that her death and the survival of He Who Remains will save the sacred timeline. However, she insists that Loki will only be replacing one nightmare with another, and that it's better to die fighting for freedom. Thanks to those words, Loki understands that sometimes it is better to destroy something just to replace it with something better. Therefore, he returns to the collapse of the temporal loom to solve the problem on his own. Step by step, Loki adopts an Asgardian suit with his characteristic horns, and destroys the temporal loom with his powers. When only the dead temporal branches remain, Loki takes them with him to a new dimension, but not before seeing his friends one last time. Loki ascends with all the branches in his possession until he sits on a new throne as Master of Time. At that moment, the branches come alive with the color green, giving shape to a new temporal loom, one in the form of Yggdrasil, the mythical Tree of Worlds. Sometime later, we see the TVA functioning back to normal with B-15, OB, Mobius, Casey, and Miss Minutes, who have been reconnected. At work, Mobius sees a report of a He Who Remains variant named Kang, who caused trouble on Earth 616. But some very small people have already handled that. Although he loves his job, Mobius keeps thinking about his former life and what was taken from him. Therefore, he decides to quit. In this new TVA, OB is in charge of creating a new manual so that they don't repeat the same mistakes. On the other hand, little Victor Timely never received the first manual while Renslayer ends up captive in the void at the end of time, where the monster Alioth is waiting for her. In the next scene, Mobius sees himself in his old house having fun with his children. Sylvie stays a while to accompany him, but he prefers to stay a while longer, waiting for time to pass. Speaking of time, Loki watches over the good of all timelines. Who would have thought that the god of mischief would end up with such a glorious purpose? And so we come to the end of this great series that proves it's never too late for redemption. I hope you liked this video. All likes and comments are welcome. If you want to continue enjoying recaps of great series and movies, don't forget to subscribe to the Replay Media and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any videos.